Welcome to CPTM Smart Partners Hub, Commonwealth Partnership for Technology Management, Smart Partners Hub, and welcome to the special guests and to Smart Partners. And today is 13th of July, and it is a Thursday, it's not a Friday, but usually we have this kind of interactions and live webcasts on Friday. Now, why do we mention about Fridays? It's because the CPTM Smart Partners Hub, the library, is known for being, over the years, a safe space for any type of professions and any type of political associations, for those who are in the Commonwealth, those who are beyond the Commonwealth, and those actually who are smart partners. And this idea of a smart partnership type of interaction, which today is novel, and is novel both because of the guest, in particular, the special guest, but is novel because of the ideas that the special guest is trying to bring in, and is also hopefully novel because of the interaction that is likely to follow, or which we think it's going to be picked up by the CPTM Smart Partners, who are going to have these webcasts live, including the interactions with those who are here and those who are already part of the kind of issues we are going to bring in today. So we have a bit of an agenda, but the first thing is saying welcome actually to Professor Sirka, and welcome also to the representative high commissions. Welcome to the smart partners who are either from UK or from India, from Tanzania, and welcome to all those who are going to watch and come back to us. Finland, where Professor Sirka is from, or Sirka, as the two of us, we know each other for a number of years. Finland is almost like part of smart partnership movement, because without necessarily being formally engaged in the last 20 and so years with CPTM, professionals and points of reference to Finland have been made right from the beginning, 1995. And this is because Finland, like a number of other countries within the Commonwealth, New Zealand for instance, always attracted our countries as an example of a country which is not very much in the center, is somewhere, is not too big, not too small, is known as being very dignified in its national kind of adventures over the history, but also in kind of lately, if you weren't to have a Nokia, then you would have been anybody. Now, where Nokia comes from Finland. Now, why all these things happen from Finland? Now, when in 1998, former president of Namibia, Sam Nujoma, one of the founders of the movement, launched or called, alongside his colleagues, this smart partnership, a movement with a manifesto and so on. He had as one of his main mentors or points of reference a Finnish who got a Nobel Prize, and probably make reference to that. And so there are a number of visible, invisible similarities and affinities with Finland. So, but it is only today, actually, that really we're hoping to probably map a more interesting interaction with Finland as an example within the energy security and as part of the climate change culture that lately everybody is adopting in one or another. Obviously, the CPTM has as a genesis the networks within the Commonwealth countries and within the Commonwealth, which are attracted beyond the Commonwealth because of the science focus and technology focus, but also because the kind of issues that the group approached were relevant not to real-time situation in the countries of the Commonwealth, but they also resonated with one another. And in that sense, it became a kind of more humanity-oriented type of preoccupation. Now, usually in our type of interactions, including the large smart partnership dialogues, we don't really relate to humanity issues. We relate with quite nitty-gritty, real situations. But as a collective, actually what the group was able to do as an open group over the so many years is to actually make a contribution to the current emerging humanity trends. So I suppose your today interventions, which very much follows the Club of Rome, which I need to mention before I bring you in, because the Club of Rome is one other and not any other, or was not any other type of grouping which emerged for similar reasons in similar ways, probably led by some people with more science background like Alice King, or industrialists like Pecei, or Pentti Malatska from Finland, who was both, including a poet, including many other things, and he was a Finn too. And the Club of Rome usually nowadays is referred to as being associated only with the limits to growth, and I think we do have here a limits to growth, one of the original, in paperback original, 1972. Now the limits to growth, probably as it was late about a month ago, published by OECD, was born, people are saying, on the corridors of OECD. Now why? Because the idea of technology and economy and everything else that was not usually put together, including a more global concern, limits to growth put that on the agenda, both of the national OECD type organization, countries in the Commonwealth, developed or developing, or however you want to refer to them. Now, Club of Rome tradition and culture penetrated many issues over the years. One of the main issues that they always dealt with in the Club of Rome, and you joined Club of Rome because of Pentti Malatska, one of the founder of the Club of Rome, and there is a whole chapter in Finland, very leading chapter in the Club of Rome, in national chapter, because over the years, issues related to population growth, issues related to governance, limits to governance, issues related to learning, issues related to privatization, and so on. They've been the preoccupation or a continuation of the limits to growth. In other words, there is all this idea of exploring or pioneering, as you have been telling me, that is the best way of expressing this emerging kind of reflection. Pioneering the understanding of growth. And within the Smart Partnership movement, we had a big preoccupation lately in relation to securing the growth, if I can call it that way, within the national visioning, securing the states and ways and means to secure states within their ongoing visioning for the 30 years, one generation from today. And now, from operative point of view, one can not handle all the interactions that are taking place in this context. So one of the main dynamic stimulating factor is energy. And I suppose that's probably also one of the secrets of Finland. And both in terms of peace and security over the years, in terms of growth, adapted to whatever developments took place, and probably in that way you secure the future. So it is very important for us today to try to pick up not necessarily the usual very comprehensive sometimes kind of preoccupations. I was trying to look in the Nature journal, if you try to take trusted references. There was a lot of hope before G20 in Hamburg. They were trying to brief the G20 leaders about the fact that there are only 3 years to safeguard our climate up to the 2020 for the first carbon dioxide milestone. And one of the 6 milestones of the climate agreement in Paris is energy, alongside infrastructure, transport, land, industry and finance. So we're trying to deal with energy, probably. There are many things related to energy, and there are many theoretical backgrounds connected with complexity, connected with mathematics, complexity with different type of modeling, with data analytics impact nowadays. Now, we're not talking about either of those. We are not even talking only about a neocarbon. We are trying to see in what way Finland brought up and how did they brought up this issue of the neocarbon, neogrowth. Is relevant because Finland does it. Is relevant because everybody else is trying to relate to something which happens, in addition to debates that it should happen. And is relevant because there is a smart partnership induced into it, and also because you want to share with the others. So probably you want to introduce a bit yourself, Sirka, because we know each other as Club of members, as World Future Society, as public sector foresight, as many things. So please.
Okay.
Please.
Thank you very much, Mihaela. And ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being here. It's a great honor to give a talk to you, and I will present myself in a few words. But before that, I would like to give this book to Mihaela, because she mentioned Pentti Malaska. Pentti Malaska was the most prominent future researcher in Finland, also member of the Club of Rome, president of our Finnish Society for Future. So this is a very recent book about his thoughts. So let me first
Thank
give
you
you
very
this
much.
book.
Thank you.
This near-carbon energy project and implications for energy security is really a very hot topic, a complicated one, I must say. And about my background, I have been professor of future studies at Finland Future Research Center since 2007. And I'm also director of our Helsinki office. It's below University of Turku, and it is the biggest academic future research institute in Nordic countries. It was established 25 years ago. And before that, I used to work for VTT, and technology foresight is my speciality. I'm not an engineer, but I'm studying the impacts of technology on communities, on society at large. So I structured my presentation to you in 3 parts. I want to share some ideas of Finland as a futures-oriented country, because I consider it a strategic competence to think about future systematically and long term. And then I present the findings and the aims of our near-carbon energy project. And finally, what does it mean that we are really living in a rapidly changing world? And of course, it raises a lot of issues, not only for energy security, but for comprehensive security for whole societies. But Finland, I'm not like boasting about Finland, but I'm presenting Finland as a country that has struggled over history. We are a very small country by population, only 5.5 million people, but we are very persistent because we have had to live between 2 countries in very harsh geopolitical conditions, economic harsh conditions, so we have had to struggle a lot, and that has given us like forward-looking capacity. We want to survive, we want to succeed, we want to look forward, and that's the basis of our forward-looking capacity as a country. It means that we have to have political will as a country to think about public policy, technological developments, and developing society in the long term. Finland is now celebrating this year 100 years of independence, so it's very important for us. But we have struggled, as I said, and we are now considered in these international comparisons as the most stable country and also best country in the world for being a mother. So gender equality is a very important issue for us Finns as well. And what are the pillars for this kind of situation of Finland as a country of forward-looking approach? This is my interpretation. We base our development on 3 pillars. These are important for any country in the world, but we are really systematically developing our education system. It's like we are investing in people, in brain, in knowledge. We are very curious about everything new, and as Mihaela mentioned, Nokia, we are always looking for technological innovations, and we want to adopt and develop technology. And this we consider our muscle, and now the buzzword is of course digitalization. The Finnish government has a digitalization strategy, so we are looking for all kinds of innovations that we can have from digitalization. And the 3rd pillar, last but not by no means least, is nature. It is very important for us. It's like symbol of quality, symbol of heart and emotions, and it's also a provider of well-being. So these are the 3 pillars for Finland as a country of forward-looking. And we have nature and lakes and forests. We have more than 180,000 lakes in the country. Of course, a lot of people live in the metropolitan area south, but this is where we draw our inspiration for developing society, for developing technology and energy. And I wish to mention about future research as an academic discipline. We have an international master's program and also doctoral program in University of Turku. But it is really now, after a long struggle, considered as a discipline, academic discipline. It means systematic, holistic, multidisciplinary, very critical long-term analysis of any topic. And actually we can think about future of cities, future of energy, future of political system, etc. But we can think about future of a specific country or continent. What is future of Africa? What is future of Tanzania, etc. But then we can also extend our time horizon. We can look at 2020, as Miele referred to already, but we can still look longer ahead, 2030.
Like 2035, like the Cameroon was.
That's
talking
right,
to you.
20. It's now beginning in Finland. We use a lot of time horizon of 2050, and energy especially is an issue that we have to use long term. Also, all other environmental issues as well, because whatever we invest, what kind of infrastructure system we are building, it will last for decades. So also I'd like to emphasize that very often we look at only probable futures. What is the most probable future of some topic or some country? I think it's too narrow. We should also open up the perspective, also to try to prove what are possible futures. And then, about these possible futures and probable futures, we have to decide which are desirable futures. What is the preferred future for a specific country or for an organization or humankind at large? So, New Carbon Energy project and its scenarios that we have been constructing are very much related to this idea of systematic long-term future thinking. And when we think about future, what it is? Future is about change. When we go into the future, something always changes. So it is very critical to study, to anticipate this kind of changes. And change is not only rapid, it's continuous. And so it is becoming up, and they are having significant impact on nations, on economy, on growth prospects, and on people's lives. But really the growth depends on the questions how we can tackle these drivers, these megatrends, and not only megatrends but also trends and weak signals and black swans. Then a few words about energy. It's really critical because it's one of the most critical systems for humanity's survival is embedded in natural resources and energy. So it's really a question of survival. Without energy, there is no life. It's as simple as that. To start from that, we have to think about population growth, as Sergei Kapitsa from the Club of Rome has written books about this serious question, how the growth of population impacts other sectors of life and society. So population growth, urbanization, and rising standards of living, they mean an increased need for energy and natural resources. Therefore, what kind of energy we produce and consume and how we do that, it is becoming an increasingly critical question. And I'd like to point out that the concept of energy is now a little bit different until now we have considered energy as a very technical thing, very also economic thing and even political thing. But I'd like to emphasize, and in our project we have now explored this idea that energy is becoming closer to human beings, to people. It's not something that it's just like in the form of electricity or heating, somewhere, something that's in the background. It's becoming closer to us. That means that societal and cultural matters of energy also matter. So energy is no more a technological or ecological issue. It has implications for the whole of society. Its power relations, politics, culture, values, economy and production models is important. So what is Neocarbon Energy Project? It is a very radical new opening funded by Tekes, the Finland funding agency. And it is conducted in cooperation with Technical Research Center of Finland, VTT, Lappeenranta University of Technology and Finland Futures Research Center, where I'm in charge of the scenarios and foresight work. I'm not an engineer, as I mentioned. VTT and Lappeenranta University of Technology, they are in charge of these technical.
So is Tekes a fund?
Tekes is funding, it's innovation fund.
In the government?
Yes, the biggest government innovation fund that is funding this project. And then we have here networks, smart partnership ideas, like networking with people, sharing ideas. We are cooperating with the Club of Rome and also with another global think tank, Millennium Project, because people like participate in our surveys or some other forms. So it's a very interactive network where this project is involved. And here is just a list of methods that we use. We use traditional future studies, horizon scanning, we look these megatrends and trends. We also conduct futures clinics, and then we look at case countries. We have from Africa, we have at this moment we have 3 case countries, Kenya, Tanzania and South Africa. And my colleague has been conducting futures clinics there. And in September, I think he will visit again Kenya and Tanzania, I think. So any other country is welcome to join us if interested. So we are not imposing our scenarios, but we are testing if there are possibilities from these neocarbon energy scenarios that could be beneficial for some country. So that's the idea. And the neocarbon process means that it is emission-free process by using renewable energy, solar, wind and other renewables. And in this neocarbon model, energy is stored in batteries, in smart grids, and also into synthetic hydrocarbons. So this means it's a radical thing. At this moment, it's technically feasible. It's a little bit expensive at this moment, but these kind of processes, neocarbon processes, could replace fossil fuel-based processes. And this means also that we are moving from centralized energy systems towards decentralized energy systems. And it means more secure systems because they are not so vulnerable. But reality is that today's share of fossil fuels in the global mix is more than 80% still. It is the same as already 25 years ago. So why not move from using fossil fuels, which produce so much emissions, why not move towards 100% renewable energy systems? And what is this neocarbon? It is based on the concept of neo-growth. Every country, every company wants to grow. But growth is not always beneficial to the environment or human beings even. So we need a new kind of concept of growth. Pentti Malaska proposed this idea that we should actually start thinking what new growth could mean. It would be economic growth, but without any environmental stress and without decreasing well-being in society. It could be such growth that is looking for new sources for growth, synthesizing economic and human growth, merging growth with sustainability. So this kind of near growth society could be as a developed phase of information society. We have constructed experimentally 4 scenarios using this kind of near carbon idea, where carbon is not producing emissions, but instead we are like capturing carbon, and through electrolysis carbon is used as raw material when energy is stored into synthetic methane. We have constructed 4 scenarios. I will not go into details, but they are all following renewable energy model, but in 4 different types. And these are like global models or meta scenarios, and these can be tested in any country. Like we have initially trying to test whether one of these scenarios seems appealing to Kenya or Tanzania or Australia, and we have done an international survey where respondents have given feedback whether they can identify pioneers for these kind of scenarios. All the reports are online, so you will get these slides and the references if you are interested. But together with other technological developments, especially digitalization, artificial intelligence, big data, growing renewable energy supply, and at the same time diminishing energy prices could direct our world into unknown futures. And this is actually the reason why we think that it is also important to anticipate discontinuities. Not only megatrends and trends, but also discontinuities and disruptions, and what are their impacts then on energy security. Because renewable energy transformation, even that as such, might have unexpected implications for energy security. So my last points are concerned with this rapidly changing world and these new kind of discontinuities and surprises. VUCA world means a world of surprises and discontinuities. The abbreviation comes from the letters V for volatile, means that everything is changing. U stands for uncertain. We always have uncertainties ahead of us, smaller and bigger ones. C stands for complexity, that I already mentioned. Complexity means that we have to pay more attention to subsystems and the interlinkages of different things. We cannot anymore deal with energy as such, but energy interlinked with other sectors and topics in society. And this last letter, which I find very intriguing and very important, A for ambiguity. It means that we really have difficulties in interpreting the change, also making sense of the change. So these 4 letters together means VUCA world. And if you are interested, you can have a look at the link where Karl-Heinz Steinmüller from Millennium Project is interviewed on this topic. And what I propose that we should actually think about that we should escape the trap of linear thinking. Of course, change means also linearity. Something grows in the same direction, bigger, faster and wider. But it doesn't mean only that. It also means non-linearity. So, of course, it is important to anticipate trends. and it is already familiar strategy among many governments, and it's a useful way to anticipate future developments. We can know with certain confidence that the size of global population will be something, but there are so many uncertainties, discontinuities, non-linearities coming ahead that actually we should no more think about future as an extension of present, but as something more. Such events that break this linearity, they are constantly occurring. And if you think about, for example, Africa, there can be surprising chain of events that could actually dramatically accelerate the growth of the African economy. My project researcher Joni Karjalainen, who is doing these African studies, he actually has thought that overcoming, for example, disease burden, then if we can overcome drought problems, lack of clean water, if we could enhance gender balance, if ICTs and digitalization is promoted very fast in Africa, and if international dynamics becomes very strong beyond colonial ties, as African dynamic as such, and also increasing intra-African trade and uptake of emerging technologies. When put together, all of these dramatic change could happen. And about renewable energy transformation, it is needed. We have climate change agreements. We know that it's actually a necessity. But we need to understand the change ahead. We need to understand also the non-linearities. And what I propose is that this idea of pioneers is very interesting and important. Pioneers will profit and prosper most if they look ahead and actually take advantage of these forthcoming non-linearities. And implications of these kind of surprises on energy security we tested. For example, we could now imagine what kind of surprises and discontinuities there could happen. They can come out of any sector. We chose these 5: politics, company, civil society, robotization and digitalization, and new lifestyles. Excuse me. And then we analyzed what kind of black swans, it means surprises, might happen. I'm not going through all of them. So, company sector, what happens if internet collapses? What happens if the whole power grid collapses? And what are the impacts on renewable energy? So,
would you want to go through robotization? We just had last week the central bank governors with artificial intelligence and all that.
Yeah, this is. We had a futures clinic where people from different backgrounds were together, and they came up with this idea that a surprise could be that there would be a humans revolt. Robotization could advance so rapidly that there would be a backlash, and humans would revolt. Sort of. Also, robots could revolt. Mm-hmm. We could be like abusing robots so much, and if robots could develop not consciousness but some kind of thinking patterns, they would realize that they are treated as slaves. So robots could revolt. That was another surprise. And then, of course, people use technology always for the good or for the bad. They could use them in wars. Weaponization of civil robots would be one surprise. And of course, surprises can be positive or negative. There could be also a surprise that we could end up having a benevolent global government. That would of course
the word.
Thank you. That's needed. Thank you.
Thank you.
That would of course be a very positive surprise. But then these are reported in more detail in a report that has just been last week published, so you can have a look. And then we actually went deeper. We analyzed what these on the left-hand column, these kind of black swans or surprises like total industrial
Could you mention a bit about the black swan concept?
Yes. Black swan concept.
I think we have a...
Yes. It's almost a synonym to the concept of wild card.
It's a wild card.
I mentioned that megatrends, everybody knows megatrends. Then there are trends, then there are weak signals, emerging issues. But then there are wild cards or black swans that not many people are aware that might happen, but if they happen, they are surprising events that if they happen, they will have dramatic impact.
So it's about surprising events.
Surprising
And
events.
it came into financial...
It can be like 9/11. Nobody would imagine an event of such magnitude.
impact of it.
Impact. And Fukushima, it was a threefold black swan.
Mhm.
First earthquake, then tsunami, and then the nuclear plant accident. So those kind of events,
Financial crisis.
financial crisis
Of one
and
kind
crash,
or another and crash.
if they are really big and dramatic and unexpected, they are black swans. So participants of this specific futures clinic that we had in May in Helsinki, these actually were the 5 examples of black swans that were like imagined that might happen, and then we tested them if these 4 scenarios, if one of them was more robust, or the robustness, resilience of scenarios was tested. So that was very experimental test how to use scenarios. Scenarios are not predictions. Scenarios are just manuscripts of possible futures. And it is up to governments, up to companies, up to any institutions to look at the scenarios and use some elements for their own strategy. So, for example, we thought about, because in our scenarios we have this renewable energy world, we thought about a possible surprise would be, maybe not a surprise even, but some people felt it's a surprise that a very systematic revenge of the fossil fuel industry would happen. There would be some event that they would... It's no secret that in energy business there are lobbyists for all different energy fields, but this was rather interesting event that was imagined. So, and then it was like developed what would happen. But actually, to sum up, what I would like to point out, as the world is very complex, so discontinuities, non-linearities, they increase. And the world becomes more volatile, and surprise is the new normal. But we shouldn't be paralyzed with it. We should use foresight tools to anticipate future, even surprises, and to prepare ourselves for surprising futures as well. And actually, when the world is looking for possible transformation towards nearly a 100% renewable energy society, anticipating these kind of unexpected events could improve energy security. And actually this 100% renewable energy system is not just a dream, it's technically feasible. So renewable energy is a huge opportunity for all countries in the world, and it may become a necessity even. So people, countries, organizations that are already going towards it, of course, will have competitive edge. So, for example, if you think about Africa, which African countries want to be, because it's a political will and decision that has to be made, want to be pioneers in renewable energy transition, because those economies will grab renewable energy transformation will flourish, and the growth will be then in the category of new growth, not destroying the environment. Okay, thank you for your attention, and I'm happy to answer any questions.
Silka, just a little bit to finish off the roundup.
Yes.
So the Finnish government would have now, or is pioneering now, as a strategy, and what does that mean?
Yes.
It's based on
yes.
the foresights and the...
Yes. It's relevant.
Because if we take another government...
Yes. We can think about the Finnish government as a government that has adopted futures thinking. We have a permanent committee for the future inside Parliament since 1993 already.
That's very
and
important.
We have a government foresight system. We have this committee for the future inside Parliament. Then we have in Prime Minister's office, we have a foresight unit.
Yeah.
And Prime Minister's office prepares once in an electorate period so-called government foresight report. And this government foresight report is submitted to Parliament, and Committee for the Future then gives feedback on it. So it's a constant dialogue between different units in government, in Parliament, in different ministries. In each ministry,
so it's an ongoing visioning.
Ongoing visioning.
So
in
what deadlines have got the vision?
2050.
Or deadline, time scale.
Yeah, usually it's 2050. And Finland Futures Research Center, we have a permanent representative in the committee. So they are listened to academics. Science and research is like adopted. Of course, politicians must have very brief findings, etc. But it's a very good opportunity to feed newest findings from research. And for example, I was invited to a hearing of the Committee for the Future concerning Agenda 2030, because Finland wants to implement these Millennium Development Goals very early, and we decided to combine what Committee for the Future does, but our sustainable development activities are. So we are combining futures thinking and sustainable development actions and actually this Agenda 2030. And this means that we must have a new energy and climate strategy. But of course Finland is a little bit complicated because we have a lot of nuclear energy and we have all kinds of energy systems. So I must emphasize that new carbon is a new opportunity. It's not yet it's technically feasible, but it's not yet adopted. It's a new strategic opening. So it's an opportunity.
So there's a transition.
Transition.
So there is in the ongoing visioning taking place.
Yes.
There is a transition kind of phase and a transformational phase.
Yes, and it's a one way of
because it's not just going on with visioning. You don't achieve anything.
So it's one way of promoting renewable energy transition. So I think the renewable energy transformation and transition is number one that we want to promote. And of course it depends on the local conditions in any country how near carbon energy process could be introduced. So we are very willing to a dialogue and collaboration, and of course we want to show our research if it's applicable. So that's
well,
just
an input. Well, the reason why I asked the questions because we were in the movement sometime in 2009. We were in Uganda, in Munyonyo, and there was a lot of discussion about, of course, various national visionings and so on for socio-economic transformation. And then suddenly His Excellency President Museveni and the other colleagues and everybody else under the tent, we said, well, hold on. what is the connection between ongoing visioning, the transition and the transformation. And what we ended up with, or what they ended up with, of course, it was put into our manifesto, the limits to growth, limitless opportunities. And I'm reading from it what they're saying, what everybody said, and they were from all kinds of parts of the movement and all sorts of individuals. They're saying, of course, vision, transition, transformation, and occasionally revolutions are used interchangeably. But in our context, although these are superficially synonyms, they are subtly and profoundly different in their meaning and substance. And therefore, visioning is a holy grail. So I suppose what you say is an ongoing visioning and aiming at. And we have so many visions, Vision 2035, Vision 2020, 2016, and so on within the movement. We have a lot of experience to share with Finland and the other way around. But the vision is a nexus that all national aspiration and final objective upon which our eyes must be forever set. Transition infers a reversible step-by-step movement from where we are to where we want to be along the road to the vision. As different from transformation, however, which implies some steep change, which is what you're talking about, in the way things are thought about and done. Therefore, unlike transition and transformation does not forgive mistakes easily. So the idea is that these issues around the energy security with the neocarbon and others are transitional, strategical openings, but once put into the context, they will provoke transformations which you cannot go back. And that's why it's so essential, all this background that you said that Finland has, Center for Futures, an ongoing visioning with the whole government and parliament, part of the elections, because it's not just a Ministry of Economic Planning that is implementing something. So it's extremely important, the example that you gave for the manifesto of the Smart Energy movement.
Yeah. Yes, as you raised in that manifesto, that reminds me actually, in order to succeed this transformation, it means deep change and almost so irreversible, as you say. It has to be technically feasible, and it already is. It has to be economically profitable. It almost is.
Makes sense. Yes.
And the third part, which is needed, it's really important. It has to be socially accepted. And
therefore secure.
To be secure and also to be democratized. So even we can't decide from top down what kind of transformation is just needed. We have to ask what is socially accepted, and it now seems that more and more households, more and more citizens, individuals, they want to have this kind of renewable energy transition and transformation, and also in daily practices to see where the energy comes and what kind of impacts it has, and also is it secure.
Mm-hmm. Now there was also something you were mentioning before about, again, pioneering in Finland in relation to data, which is connected to this transformation to make it possible and correct. I mean, it's not yet known, but would you mind to mention, because that's just the other day that has been.
It's very interesting situation. We have always invested on education, as I mentioned, and we always have valued knowledge. But we also want to take full use of information and data available and combine it. And we are now opening up official registers that have been until now closed. We are opening them up. We are trying to combine all kind of registers, big data, use digitalization to come up with new innovations. And this means that government has decided, Finnish government, that they will prepare a report on the use of geographical information systems and what kind of innovations will. Its work now ongoing will be completed early next year.
Okay, no, I think it will become clearer why we wanted you to mention the whole context within which no carbon is. Thank you very much, Sirka.
Thank you.
Please, thank you very much. We're trying to invite them, to capture them, to develop proof of concept or pioneering within the context of central banks with artificial intelligence, machine learning, but without necessarily mentioning them, because otherwise you threaten a central bank in trying to catch up with artificial intelligence. But here, the way you expressed the fact that issues of artificial intelligence, robotization, for instance, are brought in, they are brought in by the way of not just immediate application. They are brought in and transitionally understood and probably developed further by those who are developing. So that is another kind of thing that the central bank governors, since about a year ago, but this year again, they said we need to develop national frameworks who are doing foresights, explain, and then feedback to the digital industry what we need, what we could have securely and otherwise, not just to satisfy one specific detection of anomalies or artificial intelligence in a payment system or whatever it is. So, well, the intention is to try to, for Sirka to have some feedback in relation to the Finnish experiments, particularly in relation to the neo-carbonization model, which contributes to the climate culture in general, but is happening. So, as different from agreements, we're talking about something which is real, and the agreements are supposed to come, in fact, because these kind of things are happening, rather than agree for something to happen. So, shall we? I'm glad that Zahir Foundation from New Delhi is here, Dr. Moksing Hunt, the director of the Indian Foundation from New Delhi, and very a group member for many years. So welcome. And
from Namibia.
From Namibian High Commission, of course.
I'd just like to the context
Come.
of you said in Africa you have in Uganda, in Tanzania, Kenya, and South Africa.
Yes.
Namibia too, but we did mention Namibia. It's a
Yeah, but
special relationship between Namibia
Oh,
and
yeah,
Kenya.
because-
country back.
Yeah, I would like to know. It sounds very. It's good on paper again, but practicality on the ground, because it's more first world, even society. You said to democratize around people. In the first world society, people understand the impact of global warming and also the change in energy sources. But in countries such as Namibia, in remote areas, where it's costly even to get a basic solar panel, it's costly. How do you convince now?
Although there is so much sun.
There's so much sun. Like it's not even rocket science. Namibia should go solar, but again, the cost involved in basic renewable energy like solar is so high. And now, in such energy, the difference in cost, how do you get African societies, nations to take up such directives?
Thank you for the question. It's very relevant. I think this question of cost of solar panels for households, etc., we just need to have new kind of models. And actually, for Kenya and Tanzania, there were some examples of startup enterprises who had come up with some innovative already there. So we like combine this idea that this should be something that should be supported. So another point of view from China, I'm also a guest professor in China, so I heard that in China there are some cities where people who cannot afford obviously solar panels on their roof, actually they were subsidized. The municipality provided solar panels without any cost for these people, because these people, their families, they were well off, because they could then feed this energy back to the system. So it was a way of helping. It was a social innovation.
Yes, yes.
That kind of, but for Africa, I think it's better to have these kind of business models, new kind of business models for small companies to provide the solar panel.
But this is, I believe this is a wonderful project that you are taking up, and I hope it will be successful. But did you try to find out the rate of success and failure? Or can you contemplate what will be the kind of cost-benefit analysis of this project? Whether or not, because Finland, I know Finland very well. We have cooperation with VTT for a long time, and I have a friend there, Dr. Torsti Loikkanen.
Torsti Loikkanen, he is very good.
He is very close.
Yeah.
We were on the same PhD program,
Oh.
so I know Finland very well. They have the perspective of 30 years, 50 years, as you said, but you constantly reviewing the whole process, maybe after 5 years, 3 years, or 4 years. So did you make any kind of analysis, cost-benefit analysis in advance, or success and failure study in advance, so that you can figure out what the future will be of this project?
Yes, actually, thank you for the question. And Torsti Loikkanen was my former colleague, because I used to work almost 30 years at VTT, as I mentioned. So I know Torsti Loikkanen very well. So Professor Christian Breyer from Germany, who is in our project for Lappeenranta University of Technology, he has made calculations, cost-benefit analysis, and he has made them for actually whole continent. So I will add references to these reports also, not only what we have published, but for the whole project.
Yeah, that would be
Yes.
really tips.
So we haven't, because we are exploring the future of society, and this as an option, and renewable energy transformation based on changing lifestyles, based on different kind of changes. But specific cost-benefit analysis, what is the cost, are made by Professor Christian Breyer, and I will add the link to the information that will be given to you.
I suppose cost-benefit analysis nowadays we can do with non-linearity and complexity beyond
Yes.
beyond the cost-benefit analysis, and that is the attraction to the data analytics.
Tony Coleman, former member of UK Parliament, now academic and businessman. When I used to travel as part of the International Development Site Committee to many countries in sub-Saharan Africa, I used to talk about putting into solar panels in isolated villages as a way forward to provide power. And those people in those villages used to say to me, but do you do that in your own country? So can I pass the challenge back to you? Is there a situation where you would deliberately, if you like, said to a village or to a town, cut yourself off from the grid, get yourself self-sufficient as a zero-carbon energy town or city to demonstrate it could work, and how much would it cost? How did it change your lifestyle? How did you go forward? I'm not saying that as a critique, which is a negative critique. It's really a positive one, Because in a
It's
sense,
an experiment.
it has to start from ourselves in the north before we ask people in the south or whatever that this is the way forward. Do you have any examples of this?
I can give you an excellent example of an off-grid community, but I must say to you that that's my dream, to have an off-grid community, or
In
to
Finland?
test it in
Finland.
Finland. Yes. Actually, we have a lot of and a long tradition of so-called eco-villages that have as a primary aim to be totally self-sufficient, but they have not been totally off-grid. But this kind of tradition exists in the form of eco-villages, and also there are some individuals who are doing that. So I could have examples of few individuals who have households, not whole villages.
Well, I'm that, but my
Yeah.
village isn't.
Yeah.
Just a comment. In Germany, there are villages, totally off-grid villages. They can.
Yes, I know. I'm a member of the World Future Council,
Yeah.
which has pushed 100% renewables. But in Finland,
Yeah.
is there not a single village which is off-grid and totally 100% renewables?
The thing is
Yeah.
that we are technologically advanced, so every village has had,
We have like
grid
this.
so many years ago. So
But you could take the decision.
yeah, of course.
Cut yourselves off.
But really, Germany has.
No, I know that. But Finland,
Yeah. That's actually that's my research aim, is to have like off-grid.
But you could do that
Yeah.
tomorrow.
Yeah. I must think about it.
But
Yeah.
you will.
Yeah.
Because if the countries in the north are not doing it, it's very difficult to say, go this direction, it's the future.
But hold on.
Yes.
I don't think when I started, I said that as far as the smart partnership is concerned and the movement, it never brought in an example from one part which is called south for the north, or one part from the north for the south, or south to south. The only reason why smart partnership movement came about as a movement from Namibia called Movement by Sam Nujoma is because Finland shows how they are experimenting. Namibia shows how they are experimenting. It's not that Finland goes to Namibia, and she started with that. That's the novelty of our approach and exchanges. In fact, Namibia has quite a lot of things going on. I don't want to go into details.
More
on
than
the
in
smart
Finland,
partnership,
perhaps.
which could be useful to Finland and the other way around. So it's not that kind of conversation we're having. So the idea was that if one looks at the whole kind of transition and vision of the transformation that Finland is trying to develop.
I think that
You
Finland
co- you
is catching
compare-
up with the South. in
Well, I'm not
deciding
sure
the
it's one or
communities
another,
should work
because
together to decide.
I think it's not necessarily one another. The South, if it's South, we don't call it South, but a Namibia country or Tanzania, they are more. They have. We realize from various initiatives, because there is an immature yet economy, or not a tired type of economy or democracy, is more likely to adopt new technologies and new models and new social type of cooperation,
That's true.
simply because. But that doesn't mean it's ahead of somebody, another country, which is technologically
We all learn
quite
from each
advanced. That was the idea of smart partnership, and that's what it is. Malaysia, in fact, was trying to Vision 2020, and this is how Malaysia became the point of reference within the movement. It's because they were trying to combine somewhere in between towards 2020, and they've done in transition, they've done towards 2020 a number of things visible,
Agreed.
including problems and otherwise there,
Agreed.
So Malaysia is not in the south, it's not in the north, and I don't think the north and south are useful, particularly. But that is kind of the name of the game is smart partnership. But that being said, I think there are some comments probably might be useful from people more technologically or data orientated, or Robert, probably something more from the energy side. Please.
I've got a few.
Hold a second. Let's Moses probably.
Thank you, first of all, thank you very much for presentation. And this concept is very good. But I want to stress some of the things that we face. As usual, like to talk about Tanzania. We for a long time we've been depending on hydro power
In Tanzania.
in Tanzania. But we know there are three of costs which are involved into hydro: generation cost, distribution cost, and transmission cost. And since 1961 to time that we start to adopt renewable energy, number of households which were electrified, they were not that much, to tell the truth. And reason is the cost for building new dams. I think we all know how much it costs, and the process of getting approval nowadays, the environmental impact assessment and things like that, it takes forever.
Yeah.
So the good option is renewable energy. Solar, that's why, for example, in my country now we have adopted an energy mix where we try to get energy in different forms so that to implement the energy strategy that we have adopted. For example, we know it costs a lot to get a solar project that can power a factory, a big plant. But to light houses, there's a big success which has happened in Tanzania. We have reached a point where households, I think they are 32% of the country, which are electrified by now. Previously, the number was, we're talking about 1 digit. And all this change has been accelerated by renewable energy, using different type of source to power their houses. And it leaves some of the power which is generated from hydro to power industry now. So this is a very good thing. This concept that you have presented today, it's a concept that is needed there. Because it touches all the things, technological pillar, look at how economical it is, and the issue of the social.
It's
And
technology, education, technology, and nature.
Yes.
Am I right?
Takes
That's
them as
the
a pillar.
foci.
And it takes consideration that it consider startups also to provide their solutions into it. Because for technology or new concept to work, it should work like the way mobile technology have succeeded in Africa. It's not that companies have come to make money. They've created a platform for startups to provide solutions, and adoption of it has been going further. So I think this is a very good thing, and thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
You didn't say anything about data. Come on, you are the supercomputer now.
Yeah, well,
Yeah, it's already
there is an
there.
aspect that she talked about technology. I know she refers to smart grid, because once you apply the concept of smart grid, that's where you can use big data, you can apply other technologies which are needed. Of course, these solutions nowadays that they're supporting energy mix, they are promoting smart grid.
But a smart grid without land
is
registry
Yeah, of course now.
or identity. So, we just kind of...
You are very correct in that. There's an infrastructure which is supposed to exist in any country for all this new technology to work. And one of it is identity. It's like what my colleague were discussing before. All these things are possible in Finland because they have a spatial data infrastructure database. They've digitized their land.
They are just about launching it. They didn't...
No,
Because
but
we
lo-
have, but
You have
launching-
over now,
Mihela, launching is the last process.
Okay.
You have to do a number of things
No, yes.
for it to work.
So we're
And
talking
one of
about the
them-
data infrastructure last week.
spatial data infrastructure.
Yeah, which is easy.
Yeah. With that, then you can be able to register your citizen to get identity. You can have identity without doing all this.
And then land registration.
and land registration.
I'm just trying to see what could we do to reach the Finland ability to experiment with no carbon.
Exactly.
What do we need?
Exactly. But of course, a country cannot wait
And
until you
that-
do everything
That
to start to adopt solar, because we have a number of challenges. I think
Correct.
some of things need to
that's
go parallel, but methodical. We have to know exactly how some countries like Finland have reached where they reach.
But the Finnish are saying that they have a very special engineering in their genes.
I believe so.
So how do we do that one?
They are number one in technology.
Yeah,
No, it's engineering. Never mind what's the outcome of it.
I think there's
It's a systematic way of pulling things together. And
That's true.
but there must be something special also in Tanzania, aren't there? Like there was
There
in
is.
Malaysia, isn't it? All these doing many things with semiconductors. I mean, you exploit that particular specific thing. In
Fact
Namibia,
is-
there
fact
must be
is-
something special in Tanzania.
what I believe is, yes, there's something special in my country, but when
What
we
is it?
collaborate,
Are you aware of it?
there's a point that I'm trying to keep behind.
No, I mean,
Once we learn from each other, we can achieve a lot in this world. By collaboration, by partnership. That's where we can move very fast. I'm doing my research in Finland.
If somebody is
That's-
willing to impart the knowledge only, then you can work together.
Then willingness has been a challenge since a long
this
time.
is the smart
But we
partnership
need to work on
trying
it. That's the
to-
meaning of partnership.
I agree.
You can't force someone to... Actually, the root of the issue is to build the infrastructure so that people, both sides, they can be willing
They
to...
can be an open source.
Because there are some people, open source, there are some people they are willing, and you'll find someone is not willing to accept.
But those who are not willing or they keep it to themselves will probably remain behind.
And we have those examples.
And there are those examples. This
We
is
have
the
those
thing.
examples, historically.
Yeah.
The one historical thing is this open source like Linux, which
Yeah.
was developed
Yeah.
by Finnish kind. We have this kind of openness. We're kind of innocent people, sort of. We trust. We have a society of trust. We don't have, for example, in metro, you can walk in and walk out. Nobody will ask you whether you paid or not. We trust that you do. So, it's one advantage. Also, the level of corruption is very low, one of the lowest in the world. So that's why the society is very stable, the most stable country in the world, based on fund for peace, valuations, etc. So,
Are the Finnish very much culturally artistic also? Because
Yeah, culture
Music
matters.
is-
Yeah, it's very important. But
Jussi
that-
Sibelius is
yeah.
quite well known.
But that reflects like our relation to nature. But each country
Related to nature,
is culturally. I think
That's
each
what I'm
country
saying.
has
That's
its
something.
own
In Tanzania,
cultural
or in-
strengths.
there is the
Definitely.
natural aesthetic and so on. You can't explain it, but you see it.
Yeah, and also this idea that energy has to be within the societal context
That's
and related to the culture specific to that country. And as you mentioned startups, you might be interested in having a look at one of our 4 scenarios, which is called Startup Engineers, and the respondents from Africa, that how they gave feedback to that. And I would appreciate your feedback as well. It's in one of those reports.
Actually, the reason why I raised this engineering, it was because we were actually for a number of years smart partners associated with more promoting engineering, because we're interested in how to make things happen. How do they happen? And then you go into more kind of generic things. So I suppose it's quite important, this issue of engineering, to be promoted in most of the countries.
yeah, 2 more things I would like to mention. First is the equality issue. Both gender equality and economic equality. Finland is one of the most equal countries in the world in this sense, and that's very important. Also, luckily or not, we are a very new society, although we have been independent for 100 years and we have had autonomy for 200 years. But we are still a very new society in a way that we don't have a hierarchy. So anybody can talk to anybody else. We could have this kind of meeting with all levels of political or economic, people, and the most junior person can talk openly and will be heard, and decisions done based on his or her opinion. And so we really consider people very equal.
So dialogue is important.
That-
If
that's-
there are
that's-
thresholds,
that's-
we can't like exchange ideas and make decisions. So dialogue, like
That's
you
it,
are doing
yeah.
in Smart Partnership,
That's
is
it,
really
that's it.
essential.
Yeah.
And the other thing which Silke already mentioned is the freedom of press. We can really very openly criticize. If there are problems in society, they can be criticized. There's nobody really, there are of course limits. You can't, insult people, especially without any
Those are
reason.
unwritten.
Yeah, unwritten. But basically very open. It's like I saw news not long ago. There was a Russian person who was interviewed, young person in the street. She said, "Yes, there's a freedom of speech in Russia. You can speak whatever you like. But you don't know what happened after. In Finland, you can speak and you know exactly nothing will happen unless you commit a crime. Obviously that is a crime. So these kind of things you put together, and this is sort of the dynamics of the society,
Which
when you
evolves.
can,
and
you
that's,
can trust.
yeah.
Well, one of the examples is that police is one of the most trusted authority in Finland. More than 95% of people trust the police. In many countries, if you're involved with the police, it's a problem. You are in trouble, one way or the other. In Finland, law is always obeyed. Rule is obeyed by the point. So, etc. So these kind of elements are, of course, crucial if you want to create a society that really works, that is creative, that is innovative, and results are quick. By the way, you mentioned about this open source because, of course, thanks to internet, now information goes very rapidly, more rapidly than ever before, and it means accelerating of every kind of innovation, and all societies will develop in such speed that never seen in human history before, and that's also part of the future.
It could be almost a hyperbolic
Yes,
growth
it
in
is
some
going to be
sense, and so we
hyperbolic.
need to control that
Yes,
somehow.
yes,
And
yeah.
that's the whole point about these no carbon things.
Can I ask the attitude within your think tank, which I think is wonderful that you're doing, to biomass and the issue around seeing that as a part of the zero neocarbon framework. There are people within the United Nations system who are saying that charcoal is the way forward, and then in many of the countries where I live in sub-Saharan Africa, people are appalled by that and say that we want to keep our forests. Now, you are very much a forested country, you have mentioned it. How have you approached the concepts around looking after the biomass? I go to Malawi and they have almost no trees because they've
Actually,
had to burn them.
Cameroon Boniface was
Okay.
here.
Ah.
They associate themselves with Finland because they are looking after their forest. Quite extraordinary.
Because I think that is a very
But that's
important
very,
lesson
yeah.
Yes.
to learn. Could you
Yeah.
explain the attitude to biomass?
Yes, thank you very
And
much for
forests.
this question of biomass. It's very topical issue in Finland, and historically for our industry, of course, it has been one of the major fields. In Finland, the situation is that it's our national strategy, and government wants to emphasize the role of biomass. And for forestry, we have, again, technology. We have a lot of very sophisticated forestry machinery, but also we have very strict regulations that whenever you cut your forest, you have to plant new ones.
Yeah.
So that's the idea how we regenerate also the biomass. But biomass is there. But I must say, on the other hand, and from the point of view of Neocarbon Energy Project, we emphasize more solar and wind and hydro than biomass as such, because it's a bit controversial. But if these rules are obeyed and if we can regenerate new growth for the forest, then it's quite okay. And we, of course, consider it as a huge natural resource that we have so much. But on the other hand, forest now has a new meaning. It's not just
that's it.
a source for natural resource or using as products. It also has immaterial value, like forestry. New opportunities are for ecotourism. Like forest is even a holy place for us Finns, but forest is like it's a place where you can relax and you can regenerate your health or mental health. So immaterial values of forest is now becoming like a new topic that we are discussing. But
And carbon sequestration as
yes,
well.
yes, that as well, definitely. Yes.
In Malaysia, Rizal, Forest Research Institute, FRIM, they were very much part of us. They've been experimenting, pioneering. I don't know if you want to comment anything on forest or anything else on Malaysia.
No. I'm just quite interested in your presentation because when you said that the futures is academic field, I just saw your website. It's quite interesting actually because it's such a I don't know how to define future. So how do you make that into academic to put some rigor to it? Just it,
I think the
Yes, thank you.
Prime Minister's office has this foresight with the Ministry of Science, Technology and the Malaysian Industry Government Group for High Technology. But so we might have to see if they would be interested in trying to, or maybe they already do, they know carbon. Yeah. Okay.
Yes, and
Rob,
if I may add here, so actually we have students from more than 20 countries. So each year, by the end of the year, there is a call for students for this master program. So you can, in your country, you can ask universities to send students to apply. And then also one interesting piece of information, this Committee for the Future that is inside Parliament, they are also eager to learn about foresight tools and how to do future research. So there is a link. They are not separate like we are doing academic studies, just they're using methods, but we are like supporting policy makers and also exchange of research findings directly to the use of policy makers.
But the issues related to academic and research and science, and then therefore technology-based, the neocarbon with all the aspects, relates very much to, again, one of the issues in our group we had to deal with right from the beginning, meaning is one type of certainty or uncertainty that the science is preoccupied with, is another type of certainty that the governance, the political sort of infrastructure is dealing with. So when you try to put them together, then there is this problem of making sense of the uncertainty from the science with the uncertainty in the political framework. And well, Rob, can you make some? Can you bring some things in relation to uncertainty?
That's a difficult one actually because there are all sorts of uncertainties.
Because this is what we're talking about, a number of uncertainties, and they are dealing with that, and this is what is very there in the program.
Actually, you use separately the terms uncertainty and ambiguity, I think,
that's
in the presentation.
That's it. That's why it's very, very...
I am not clear that there is a clear distinction actually between the two. There's a kind of, at best, I think there's a kind of grey borderline between the two.
Yes.
Because it's uncertainty about where you're going.
Yeah. But it's a very good comment. But how I see, they are overlapping.
Yeah, I agree. Absolutely.
Yeah, uncertainty brings along ambiguity because it is difficult to interpret what uncertainty means. So
Yes.
in that
So it's
sense.
an ongoing.
Yes.
Can I now make one or two observations
Okay.
that have occurred to me while the discussion has been taking place? Thank you very much, incidentally, for a very interesting presentation. These are just some of my own thoughts. We may indeed want to go to what you might call distributed energy harvesting instead of centralised generation of electricity from nuclear or coal-fired plants or whatever. But it seems to me, and this thread was lost early on in the discussion, that an important
From
thing is
Namibia we
actually
heard
to
that.
retain connectivity. We don't want isolated villages. We may, this is my view anyway, we may have isolated villages. It may, a village may be so far from anywhere else basically that it has to rely on its own sources of energy. But we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that connections, whether they be by electricity power lines or by road or by whatever,
Batteries.
are enormously valuable and shouldn't be lost.
That's it.
Isolated communities are vulnerable, and you don't have to look very far to see that that's the case. So I then move on to thoughts associated with cities and the countryside. And actually all our societies, they've achieved varying degrees of urbanisation, but there are not many societies, I think, which are becoming less urbanised. Most societies are becoming more urbanised. I don't know whether that's true in Finland or not, but it's true in many countries in the world anyway. And if you are moving towards relying on renewable energy, you basically require space to do this. Whether it's solar energy or wind energy or biomass, whatever, well, biomass is indirect solar, I suppose. Whatever it is, I think on the whole you require space. So the countryside has space, but cities don't in general. They simply, if they are at all large, if they're at all high density, they don't have enough space to harvest the energy that they are likely to want to consume. There are just too many people in too small an area. So it seems to me inevitable that the countryside will have to supply cities, as it, in a way it does now, but even more so possibly in the future, if you have distributed energy harvesting. And that actually leads to an economic issue, because if the countryside supplies the cities have to provide something back, presumably. So these are thoughts, right?
But
Let me move on. There is an analogy here between the cities and the countryside on the one hand, and between young people and older people on the other hand. And older people are a bit like the countryside. Older people tend to have capital in many countries. They've accumulated physical property. All the young have to offer, in general, unless they are lucky enough to have inherited something significant from their parents, are their own labour and their own creativity. So it's a bit like cities and countryside, because this is basically what the cities have to offer, it seems to me, as well. My thoughts didn't get any further than that, but would you like to comment on those?
Oh, definitely. Thank you very much for this. I really have to muse upon them, because this question of cities and countryside has been my favorite topic also for previous research. And the relation, maybe I comment first on the space question, because in older society it has been a tradition that countryside provides food and material for cities. Maybe it's again here in the energy new system that countrysides will have farms like wind farms, solar farms, and they provide for the city. But on the other hand, I would like to see a hybrid model developing. Hybrid model which I called ecoregion. Not seeing a dichotomy between cities and countryside, but a synergic hybrid model of ecoregion. Yes, and so that also countryside will not just be providing energy, farming energy for city, but like interaction and so synergic entity. And yes,
Okay.
thank you.
Okay.
That, of course, would involve quite a social revolution in many countries,
Yes.
I think.
Definitely.
And have you explored that kind of thing actually is harder to achieve, in my opinion, than engineering change. Engineering change is relatively straightforward. You know, if you want to have more solar generation, you just have to manufacture the solar panels, and you have to install them and so on. There's a clear route to that. But if you want to sort of kind of bring the cities and the countryside more together, which you implied through your idea of eco-regions, you have to persuade people, and you have to persuade everybody, not just a few people.
Exactly, that's a societal challenge.
Sirka, you probably know, I don't know, we need to have you again here if we are going to explore kind of models of similar type of models like Finland in the countries we have in Smart Partnership movement who explore neo-carbon and neo-growth. But there is a lot of preoccupation lately, including by World Bank, exploring and so on, things related to cities, things related to scaling up, and what means scaling up from the countryside or from the villages to the cities. Now, in the meantime, the cities are growing, informal settlements around cities are evolving, and they are actually real-time things that are happening, which could be reflected on as they happen. And this is what, if you take Namibia and Windhoek, you could see what is happening around Windhoek in the number of years, and you could even emerge, or one would emerge a pattern of what is taking place based on this neo-carbon. I'm sorry we don't have time, but India probably is one of the main example of the multitudes of type of developments in the entire kind of menu of your developments. But the preoccupation in the movement is stimulating or nudging the energy developments. The energy security. I don't know.
But I think we should need
probably we need more.
We need
yes.
all
we need everybody
in government, companies, and not only big companies but startup companies as well. Then NGOs, and also we would need representatives of media and art and culture people, artists. So we have to give
local government.
Exactly. Yes, and cities are really a powerful, in a powerful position.
Would be the energy suppliers,
also, but not only.
Not only. So, please, Moses.
Thank you very much for your comment. Basically, I see parallels between digital infrastructure that we have with its own all the ecosystem and energy infrastructure. They are one-to-one parallel. Because, for example, if you take mobile technology, we have mobile companies. Here we have energy generating companies.
Yes, I was trying to see what is.
To make sure that all people are inclusive, you need statistics. So NBS, they are needed here, and in energy also you need proper statistics. And there's somewhere where they merge together. That's a concept which we call a smart grid, where in order to get proper information of the energy, you need a bit of ICT into it. And that's why we create a platform for startups to provide solutions. So there's a parallel between...
Are there any equivalent with central banks, which suddenly they are on the point in energy context?
In energy, we have energy regulators in
Could
every
be.
country. So
could
they
try.
act like
I don't know if Finland does that. Did you...
Yes, we have.
Yeah?
Yeah.
It could be.
It's legislation basically which stipulates what you can do, what you cannot do, and but behind that legislation there's also always public opinion. So you need to work several levels to get acceptance for certain things to happen in society, and that's why all parties must be involved.
Okay, kind of.
We have talked about developed countries, we have talked about developing countries, but how about the small nations?
The island.
Small nations, if we can implement this idea, because they are totally virgin, they don't have science, they don't have any industry, they don't have anything. So you can start from the beginning with these countries.
That's America.
And this is exactly, we are holding a conference in Delhi in November 14, 15 and 16, we are invited. Because we are getting people from these small nations, and we would like to say that what we are doing and what way we can help them. So your project could be an ideal situation for them to know what could be possibly done in these countries.
So actually, the Commonwealth, there is a Commonwealth summit I mentioned.
Yes.
In April next year, and obviously one of the overall theme is about renewal of the Commonwealth, or renewal in the Commonwealth, and one of the 4 issues are related to resilience and climate change, and that's one of the reasons why we alerted all the high commissions in London, the 52 countries, and they're usually at this point of time doing all sorts of things in the summer, including they are very busy in the Commonwealth, preparation of the Commonwealth Summit. That's why they are not here. But they are going to be very interested, developed or developing countries, including British government, who is going to be host in this particular discussions we had. So, and they are particularly interested in the small islands. Seychelles is leading what is called SEED. So thank you, Maxim, for bringing in the issue. No, I suppose probably we need a glass of wine, but before that, I think, Sirka, we have been, you can only, one is only able to push the limits, or pushing the limits, either the limits of growth, since 72 or so, when we're more aware of, or pushing the limitless opportunities onto practical things. Not being optimist or pessimist, but being realistic. And this is something that Pentti Malatsa particularly made in various ways, even here, made that point with Alex King.
Yes.
And but what particularly attracted me into, besides the context, was that when you have something so radical as you propose, to understand it, you need an even more radical step. And you include it actually in the presentation, not only the radical new carbon, but the more radical, because you can't explore the radical without to understand it, without having something more radical than the radical you are presenting. And that is probably one of the main things, and probably you may want to even make more of the point that you in your presentation. And we should probably end up with, again, Pentti, and as I said, very important, in our movement and in Finland too, the art and culture and poems, and he was making here, he was reading when we celebrated Alex King, a poem he made called Growth Continues. I mean, what type of growth? That is no growth, or whatever growth, limits to growth, or smart partnership growth, inclusive growth. He says, growth continues. It's not surprising that growth continues, even though the earth is finite. Most people, rich or poor, see expansion and obtaining more as the only viable alternative to their real and immediate desires. Even though the earth is finite, in the world of the riches, the obtaining more appears as meaning of life, necessary for status and for existence, defined solely through things and matter. Even though the earth is finite, in the world of the poor, obtaining more seems equally to be the only way out of poverty and despair, where even children may become not a source of joy and love, but a thing of trade and exchange. Even though the earth is finite, until better thoughts will be found to remedy the problems encountered, neither the rich or the poor will give up their hopes and desires invested in the idea of growth, even though the earth is finite. But the earth is finite. So that's Penty. And you gave us, CPTM, a book, I suppose. We're going to give you our manifesto and to add into it, because every is a live manifesto, Smart Partnership Movement. In the group, CPTM group, we had a preoccupation with environment, particularly with social cooperative type of arrangements dealing with environmental actions for quite a number of years. This is a program, most successful one, which comprised Caribbean, Guyana, Malaysia, Cyprus, Mauritius, Ghana, Zimbabwe. It was called Innovation in Development for Environmental Action. And
thank you very much.
And finally, just not to compare with Penty, but we have a Mauritian smart partner who writes very good sonnets. He's a Mauritian Chinese. He's also very, very, very good. He understands very well the Chinese minds. So this is Entering the Chinese Mind Sonnets.